Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted to have a conversation with Azumi Uchitani. Azumi, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. My pleasure to be here.
Allow me to introduce Azumi. She has 25 years experience in international business development between Japan, Europe, and the States, solving issues and hurdles arising from cultural differences between Japan and Europe. She's also a professional artist, writer, and speaker, and currently her art and poems are exhibited at Nomad Works in New York. So well done there. Furthermore, at the weekend, she also teaches Japanese sea ceremony and calligraphy meditation. She's lived in a number of countries around the world, but is currently living in Dublin, Ireland. Again, Azumi, welcome to the program. In preparation of this interview, I had a look at your LinkedIn program. And if I read one quote there, it states that you lead and mentor multinational project teams and manage relationships on joint ventures, post-merger integrations, while bringing inner peace, harmony, and inspiration to everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
To me, when I read that sentence, it has a very Japanese feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that deliberate?
Well, actually, it's not deliberate. Japanese feel that's actually sounds, because interesting because I'm, Japanese, and although I have been in Europe for over about now, it's number is increasing. As we get older, 30 years now since I was student as well. So probably my LinkedIn, profile, it's maybe this long sentence, but what I do is really like to bridge not only Japanese and the, like European, American, Westerns, but also my work has evolved, especially like for me, it's my, life mission and also my research and interest and how every individuals in the world behave and think and interact. So since I lived in Netherlands for 20 years, and before was Ireland, UK, and also I had some time in France as well, and working with the professionals all over the world. And it's sometimes I help Dutch and Belgian doing business together because, although you are neighbors, your cultural different, you have a big cultural difference. And then it comes up in the communication as well. So, I help and work not only, like the corporations, but also in the individual levels. But what it sounds like, wow, okay, this sentence sounds like, wow. But I'm the person who wrote about it, but this is what I do. But it's really, what I do is really, especially it's evolved over the years. And now in this stage, I really, it's beyond the cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have cultural assumptions and the also, the background. If you're from India, you have a different background, and that's like if you're from the Netherlands and Japan, Holland and France, Ireland. Everybody has a different assumption how others behave when it comes to business, and then this comes up without our control sometimes, especially when we are most stressed.
Okay. Now, before we go into your work in that intercultural relationships, how did you end up in Europe in the first place? What brought you to Europe?
Well, actually, I actually have to really thank my family, especially my grandfather, who sponsored me. I came to study and experience and the actual culture because my study was English language, literature, intercultural communication. And then in order to really feel and understand the different culture, well, I was actually speaking English, but then from Japan, then it's different. So my grandfather said, well, like if you want to go, you need to go and you experience as much as possible and come back, after 1 year.
Yeah.
But actually, I kept staying here.
Yeah. Okay, you never came back.
Well, I go back to Japan very regularly,
Mhm.
but like I just, I had my base. I have been having my base in Europe.
Okay, and I understand you also come from a very strict traditional family.
Yes.
How does that translate? What does that mean?
Well, it means like like our family. I'm from the prefecture called Wakayama. It's south of Osaka, and our family was like we were the head of the family. So I lived with my grandparents. My parents were very much involved in the in the community, society, and also with relatives. And so then I had to live in a kind of, well, I think, as you can imagine, we had certain family protocol as well, and in a way also very disciplined as well. And I was actually educated, since I was a child to, like, for example, to follow certain Japanese cultural practices. And my grandmother from my mother's side was kimono maker, so also about manners. And so these were quite strict or traditional. But now, especially when I came out of Japan, when I was a child, it was really, because I had a free spirit, I was quite, adventurous. So to fit in that box, so it's pretty difficult. But then when I came out of Japan, and I started seeing the real essence and the real teaching of what, I had learned. And, so that was how can I say, if you see sometimes only the frame, the outside, then it looks kind of, difficult, traditionals. But then I was able to see what I had learned there was a beautiful legacy. So yes, traditional means that I learned and acquires this essence of Japanese ancient wisdom.
Okay. By the way, did your family appreciate that coming from that background that you decided to stay in Europe?
Well, it was, like in the beginning, especially after, especially my mother was really, sad, and also was angry because I was supposed to come back to Japan. And in my 20s, I was more focused on the like career side. Especially I started my career in IT. And in the business side, business development, I was always go, go, go. Then it was also the adventurous times. And of course, not only Japanese culture, but I was very much into European arts and European cultures. I was enjoying traveling. So in a way, the Japanese, coming from Japanese culture was here, and I pushed down, and the European side was here. And then that side, I had some conflict, of course, with, it was like it looked like I had forgotten about all the essence. But then gradually, this came together. The Japanese side, I was suppressing. I started showing more, and so then now, they are happy, especially, and that's also beside my corporate, work.
Yeah.
I teach Japanese ancient wisdom. I actually express that through my art, my teaching, and so that's and then I also feel okay. Now I'm in balance, and also my family are also proud of what I have been doing as well.
Okay. Well done. So you started off in IT. So when did you realize you have something to offer, or about that cultural gap, that difference? How did that start?
Well, it was, of course, it was already during my study in Japan. I studied, the culture different. It's like, I don't know if you know the it's like culture iceberg, what you see in the top and what's below.
Yeah.
It's like you need to understand what's behind. So that's I knew what I learned, and also I experienced, because I was listening to the music, even the language is so different, and so and then doing the business, and my role was also, and I was in order to do business development, and like working ethics and the values are different, although even if you have a common goal. So then it happens in a daily communication, not only the big picture, but the small daily. So that's so that's since actually I experienced myself not only in business when I landed in UK. Yes. So then also I learned.
But so I understand. So, but at a certain point, you decided, okay, what I need as a prerequisite for my job is going to be my job. So at a certain point, you decided, okay, I'm now going to focus on helping organizations start to collaborate. I mean, you are now known as a corporate marriage expert.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
Well, it means like okay, like for example, well, I think most of you also as a listener, that when there is a two merger or joint venture of the company, it's about human relationship. So okay, it's like the marriage.
True. Now, when you go into an organization who wants to know about Japanese culture, what are the top 3, top 5 things you immediately want to share with people?
Let me see. It's also depends on the where I am.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yes. And I think these days, we can access to information very rapidly. Like if you just put one word, Japanese culture, you can see on Google. So then it depends on how much this person knows about Japan. But then let's see, 3 things you mentioned, 3 things about Japanese culture. Actually, like what I say to them is that don't be afraid of silence.
Okay.
Because in Japanese communication, this is also in one of my video. You can, if somebody is interested, you can see. There is a space in between. So space in between means like when we are talking, like we are now kind of in a flow, and I don't actually stop for 5 minutes. But like in a meetings, it is in Japanese, well, especially when we speak in Japanese language, there is a certain moment of silence. And then we just nod and then we connect with our spirit and heart. But that moment, especially for the Western professional, feels so uncomfortable and try to fill in the silence. So then this is the silence in between, the silence gap that we have in Japanese communication. And that's we have this silence gap, but it does not mean that you have said something wrong or nothing. So it's not about, what I'm talking is not just outside culture, but within communication, what you can
no, I get that. And is that an expression of the inner peace you talk about?
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah. So it's inner peace, and just to be able to. You can also use in our communication daily, in daily basis. So then like there's the silence, and we connect, and we just feel, and the moment of even blissness. So that's one thing. And would you like another two?
Yes, I mean, I'm curious. Also, I think people who are listening to this will be curious to know, hey, what to watch out for. And these, no, yeah, please share.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm saying is that not only the challenges that you come across, but I just want to share. I'm just thinking still, and that's something that you can also take away from the Japanese culture and Japanese wisdom. So if you see in that way, then it's becomes kind of more interesting and fun. The other thing is Japanese, especially compared to the Netherlands, Dutch people and Japanese people, one of the most significant difference is if you see the Hofstede cultural dimensions.
Yes,
You can
Great
also
Hofstede, yes.
and that's the extreme dialect.
Yes,
Japanese are
true.
extreme indirect. So that's the one with the big difference. So we are not only the Japanese nationals, but also there are other nationals who are also towards, of course, indirectness. So we have a very much ambiguity and the indirectness, and so that's you might many probably especially in the business scene, you get really maybe annoyed because you want to hear now what it means, and so that's the difference. And yes, so the ambiguity, and that's also related to this silence that I mentioned from the beginning, and so ambiguity, indirectness.
Okay. Now, because I read that you decode the complexity and mysticism of Japanese culture and philosophy.
Yes.
Now, you could always make the statement, or maybe I'll make it bring it as a question to you. Would you then qualify Japanese culture as more complex than other cultures?
It is complex. It is complex, and it is complex. But if you know why it's coming from, the indirectness is because for the Japanese value, the value that actually drives Japanese people is the harmony. Okay, so then to keep the harmony is the one with the most important thing. So it's actually reflecting every communications. So then we don't want to kind of it's like destroying the moments of harmonious it's called harmonious atmosphere. So that's also because of the Japanese histories and Japanese the geographical location as well. So it's over the years and years that we had to live like in the ancient time, even prehistoric time, and we had to collaborate within a group. That's in other countries as well, but so that's our historical background as well.
Okay. Now, you even have a YouTube channel on Japanese wisdom and culture. Who did you develop that for?
Well, actually, it's actually started with in 2020 during the lockdown. I wanted to, well, there's two factors. One, I want to do something meaningful, and my client, she was the chairperson of the International Women's Association. She, Ms. Azumi, why don't you do this? Because I had to give a talk. Why don't you just, to spread the word, we can use the YouTube. So, yeah, okay. And then my son happened to be into filmmaking. So then I said, okay, then we can actually make a nice project for him. And then, so then I started, this channel.
Okay.
20.
So good for you, good for him.
Yeah.
Good for everybody watching this.
Yes.
Now, I already had a look at a couple of those short videos. I mean, they're fascinating where you talk about various aspects of Japanese culture. Now, is this common knowledge in Japan? So, would anybody in Japan being able to make the same videos or at least recognize this, or is this a result of your own very traditional upbringing?
Well, I must say this is a result of two things. One is the traditional upbringing, especially my mother's side. Well, we were actually very much in. I was, Shintoism related. We were very close relationship. And then also, I decode, as you mentioned, I decode from the West. Like what you see, all the questions that I receive from the from other nationals, like through my work so then I combine so the question so I can see the world in a European way and I can see the world in Japanese way. So then when I see the Europe, when I use I'm like a hybrid person. So when I use the European side of gears, then I see why does it working that way.
Mhm.
So then that was the question, and many question comes from my while I was giving after my talk, or so then I can also dig into the more deeper. So for example, the philosophy of wabi-sabi, for example,
Mhm.
how it is translated is like finding beauty in perfection, but it's not really it's something much deeper. So then I help for example you to understand what it really means, and then makes it much easier, simpler, and to use in your daily life. And that's what I wanted to kind of bring more to, not just okay that's the Japanese things, but to to take it in here. Like
Yeah,
what
because in one of the videos you've presented at a TEDx, you talked a number of times about elevating the moment.
Mhm.
Could you explain to the audience what that means and why it's so relevant?
Yeah, elevating moment or be in the moment. Yes. So like this moment, there is a philosophy called Ichigo Ichie. This moment now
Hmm.
comes only once in lifetime, right?
Yeah.
So then like you might drink coffee every morning in the same cup, same time, but it will never be the same because the temperature of outside is different, and you might feel your body might be different, so you might feel the taste might be different, and so nothing will be the same. Absolutely. So then it means like then we tend to forget, because when we have this life of routine, okay, this is the same thing, okay, we have breakfast with the family, and so then okay again, okay, rush, but then when we realize this moment, even the same thing happens only once in our lifetime, then we have more appreciation, and we can also have more compassion to what is happening.
Okay. And do you have an idea why, and I'm making an assumption here,
Mhm.
um, the whole concept of elevating the moment is more conscious in Japanese culture than in other cultures?
Well, I think it's also, Eastern philosophy as well.
Okay.
It's also it's coming back. Um, well, in Japan, we have the philosophy of Shinto, and
Mhm.
also Buddhism. But then, in general, we are part of nature. We are part of universe, and so that's like in short. Okay. So then if we actually live in accordance with the as a part of nature, as a part of the universe. In Japan we have a lot earthquake and natural disaster, we cannot control it. So then this wisdom, or like we experience, okay, what we just enjoy, um, connect nature, connect to people, connect to the environment, and then enjoy this moment.
I got that.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of questions before I move on to your work as an artist, because I'm interested in that. What are the common mistakes Westerns make when trying to do business in Japan?
Common mistake to look at Japan. Well, Japan has so many different aspects, like also we have this serene side of, like a tea ceremony, kimono, and also we have the crazy world of manga, anime.
Yeah.
So the common mistake is, just to, for example, like many people associate, kimono with geisha. Okay, so these are this actually not true. Okay, geisha wear kimono, but this is not the kind of the image of kimono. So then what I recommend is to get rid of this assumptions, and just to see if you are interested in kimono. Okay, then look at what is kimono. And then notes from the many media suggested you before. So yeah, I like, okay, I like to know more about kimono, but is this, so then have a question. I think it's good to have a question.
Okay. And can you also turn it around? Can you also help people from Japan?
Yes.
Avoiding mistakes when coming to Western Europe or States. What are the common mistakes most people from Japan make?
Well, actually, this becomes more like the general, general things, because people also, like when the Japanese comes to Holland, oh, it's the country of tulip, and the windmills. Where's the windmills? So then again, it's also, when we look into other countries, of course, we have these images built in our awareness, but then try to see the truth of what it is. So then it's to open our mind. Of course, we have expectations. We want to learn something, but then again, just to keep our learning and learning ability open. So too much, of course, we have some expectations in life, but then open, with open mind, open heart.
Okay, good to know. Now, as mentioned, you also are a professional artist. What kind of art do you provide?
Well, my art, well, actually, I have to call myself an accidental artist.
Okay.
I have been, painting and also doing calligraphy since I was a child. My art is, I have several ways, but let me see. Currently, I have exhibition in New York, and that's I made with Japanese calligraphy based. So some of them has symbol, and then I combine with gold. So it's also like a reflection of myself. I'm Japanese, but I have also many influence from other cultures as well. And my life has been like that, as I said, hybrid. So my art is also hybrid. So one of the art, I used kimono obi background as a kind of frame, which is my legacy from my grandmother. And then I combined with the calligraphy, but also I combined with acrylic gold, and together with poem. So I have a poem as well for every art I make.
Okay, so it sounds like what you've been doing for the last 25 years in bridging those cultural gaps, that your art is also an expression of bridging that cultural gap.
Yes, and then its expression. Some of them has a symbol, and some of them are really intuitive lines. Like okay,
Yeah.
this will be the light, and then they have uh, with the stroke of calligraphy, Japanese. I use sumi. It's a
Mhm.
Japanese calligraphy ink.
Yeah.
But sometimes I also make with just acrylic, but also very much abstract and just, how can I say, um, also comes with um, connecting, you said, inner peace. And so from that, from the fountain of myself.
Now, I've had a look at the website of the exhibition in New York, and we'll definitely include a link because it's difficult to describe the art. You really have to see it. So I'll
Yes.
definitely include that. And where do you get your inspiration from for that art?
Um, well, actually, it's actually from nature.
Hmm.
And nature, and then often nature, and also from my life, and um, uh, its inspiration is also from really inner side of myself. The exhibition called the Art of Life, and for example, like there's uh, light. Light, the topic of light, the topic of the path.
Okay.
And then I tune in, and the inspiration comes from it's when I meditate, and the voice, or like I'm like a medium. So whatever comes to my myself, the reason that I said nature is also like when I see the flower, it's just in the in the park or forest, this brings me smile. And then the smell of like
Mhm.
the grass. And so and then I can open, and I can connect to higher self, divine energy. Then comes, so then sometimes I make the art and the also poems together. So some of the works are purchased by a company in London, so they are exhibited in their workplace. And yeah, because of my my daily work in a corporate world, and then also this is this artwork I also likes to bring back to the corporate area as well, where can, or even in the office space in your at your home, just feel the peace and some inspiration, where we tend to forget everyday life, like working busy, and then connect to it's like I would like to be a catalyst for anybody to connect to divine energy. So that's my art.
That is beautiful. Azumi, I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
And you did mention the big cultural difference between Japanese and Dutch culture. So I'm going to ask you a very direct question. Have I made any mistakes or errors in this interview where you feel you should not have done this in Japan? Be honest, be Dutch.
No, no, no. You haven't. You haven't. No.
Okay,
It
no,
has been a pleasure. Yes.
thank you. Sometimes you're not aware you're actually making mistakes. That's why I wanted to ask.
Okay.
And finally, in what you've been doing in your whole life,
Mhm.
how do you perceive success? What does that mean to you?
Okay. Yeah, and that's actually changed, and
Okay.
the perception of success changed uh, since when I was in my late 20s and now. So
Yep.
I think many of you, if you are like in your 30s, 40s even, yeah, you have a goal. Okay, you want to accomplish certain level. You want to get to achieve certain things, and to set up a business, or to make quite a it's in a kind of business world. It's a culture
Yeah.
to achieve goal. Okay, then you think, okay, when you have done it, then yes, it's look, oh, you're successful, you got the success. So that was in my, like when I started business as well. And then, like, okay, like a checklist. Okay, I've done this. Yes, I've done this. That was a success. But then I realized I hit also, well, also I had, when I in the Netherlands, I had a Japanese salon, the project as well, which is to bring people together, and I had the, like charity project as well, and I've done a lot. But then I got seriously ill, and that made me think. And I was I was in between life and death.
Okay.
And that time really made me realize what's really success. So my definition of success now is, like how much every day I can bring joy, peace, and to share with other people. It sounds utopic, but and that's also in workplace as well. I want to be of service. I want to, help others, but also I want to feel joyful. I want to feel love and peace, even in this, even in the most stressful, working moments. If I can be of service, that's my success.
If I would translate this in my mind, it sounds like success is being able to find inner peace.
Yeah, it's not finding, but then to feel. Everybody can feel. Yes, it's a success, especially if you are success, inner peace, but also love. To give love, to receive love, and that's inner peace. But also, we live we live with people, and as much love you can give, and as much love you can receive, and that's also inner peace as well. But then this sharing this love, and like if we are going, like if you are told that you're gonna die tomorrow, and what will be the success? It's not about how much. Yeah, of course, it's great, and I also enjoy having money, but it's not how much accumulates the money, but also, how much you feel love, how much you have given love, and so that's that's the success. So that's, for me, it's a successful. This definition of success. So it's not about romantic love. It's about the love of what you do, and the love you share in the workplace every day. And so that's, for me, that's the definition of success.
Azumi, it's a success I can inspire to. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights in how to bridge cultural differences between Japan and Western Europe. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Welcome. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.